while we're here, I figured might as well go ahead and reinstall this pinion gear. Serves as the flywheel nut too, if I remember correctly. It's got two flat spots here. I'm gonna say it was 3/4 inch. Wrench will fit on that. In terms of these, I always just tighten them as tight as I can get with a wrench while holding the flywheel fins. That might have to go over. Nope, that was right the first time. And this thing here just sits on here and helps hold this in place. There we go. Alright, let's move on to the next disaster. Alright, so I got the pistons and valves and rings and stuff in the ultrasonic cleaner soaking right now, so I figured in the meantime we'd go ahead and take a look at this poor little flow jet carburetor here. It's definitely in rough shape, say that much. But, well, that actually turns. The end of the needle valve here is broken off, so we'll need a new one of them. Wow, that's a really sad looking needle valve, I'll tell you what. I'm going to see if we can't get this soaking with some Croil. Maybe we'll be able to get this jet out of here. Might be a small miracle. Got a special made screwdriver here just for getting these jets out. And I'll be damned, it cracked loose. That's crazy. Figures, the roughest flow jets you find, the tubes come right out, and then the ones that are like new old stock, the tubes are welded in there and you can't get them out. But hey, I'm not complaining. Good thing we pulled that out. That thing's nasty. Looks like it might be slightly bent too. Yeah, it's definitely a little bent. I don't know if that's going to impact its functionality or not though. Alright, got all 4 screws out. Of course we had one troublemaker here, wanted to strip out, so I took the hacksaw and cut the groove deeper and then we were able to get it out. Luckily it wasn't too bad. It's definitely a little crusty in there, but nothing too bad. I've seen far worse. This could be problematic. Because unfortunately the way that these things are designed, you have to take the float off because otherwise you'll never get the gasket on there. So that definitely needs to slide a little bit. I'm going to screw around with this off camera, see if I can't get this pin out of here, and then we'll see about giving this thing a good clean and reassembling it. Alright, so that carburetor is currently soaking in the ultrasonic cleaner. But I got my piston and rings and stuff back, so I figured go ahead and start by installing the rings on the piston, and then we can install the wrist pin and new connecting rod here. So I went ahead and cleaned out I threw it through the ultrasonic cleaner, loosened everything up, and then I cleaned out the ring lances and everything, and the rings themselves. So these should just pop right back on there. Hopefully. Like so. And yes, there is an actual way that you put these on. The order does matter. I was just looking at one of the old cards that comes with the new old stock rings to remind myself. But those are on there like that. And then we got a wrist pin here. A brand new connecting rod. So this should just slide right through that. And then the retainer clips go in there too. These go in here, and I always grab them with a small pair of needle nose, and you kind of have to twist them in, and they catch in a groove in there. And that falls into the groove like that. And go to the other side, push the wrist pin all the way back against it. I'll grab that and do the same thing. And there you go. There's the piston rings and connecting rod assembly done. So I'm going to go ahead and take the cap off of this and we'll oil everything up and maybe we'll drop it back in the engine. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and install the piston now while we're waiting for that carb to finish cleaning. I'm going to put plenty of oil on it. I'm going to line the ring gaps. Also going to do some on the small end of the rod there. You don't want those ring gaps to be aligned. It's never a good thing. Put some oil in the cylinder. Now there's an X stamped into here in the bottom of the piston. That always goes to the magneto side. So we're going to drop it in like this. I have a piston ring compressor, so I just compress them by hand. Not too terribly hard to do. The hardest part is making sure you don't pinch yourself. There it goes. See if I can put this whole thing upside down here. And we will see about torquing down the rod. Pull that up to bottom dead. Put some more oil in there. Just so you guys know, I don't know if everybody knows this. The cap only goes on one way. There's a boss there, and then there's a matching one on the other end of the rod. Those always have to line up. Alright, so I know some of Briggs engines did this. I've got two brand new lock washers there, and we're going to use them to hold these in. I don't know if that's what this specific rod is supposed to have, but I do know other Briggs engines use lock washers like that, so that's what we're going with. It's also all I have and could think of right now. Alright, go ahead and torque these down now. Just check the old Briggs Repairman's Handbook for the spec. There we go. That seems happy enough. Shoot a little more oil on a couple things in here and we'll spin it around a little bit. Feels pretty good to me. Alright, cool. I'm going to flip this thing back over and let's get those valves installed. Now unfortunately, I do not have a seat cutter. I do have a lathe, so I could cut the valves, but the lathe needs work. That figures. But what I'm going to just do is I'm just going to end up lapping the crap out of them. The right thing to do is you get that valve seat cutter, you cut the seats and then you cut the valves, and then you only have to lap it for like 2 seconds and it's done. But like I said, I don't have access to that stuff, so this is going to have to be good enough. I've got the 2-part Briggs lapping compound set. So you start with coarse, and then you polish it up with fine. Get those sitting there. Unfortunately, my valve lapping suction cup things here kind of suck. So we'll see how much luck we have. Luckily, these have other ways of spinning them though, with these 2 holes that are in it. But I'll try and show you guys the right way to do it. But there are no promises with this tool. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Oh, maybe. What you're supposed to do, you get stuck on there, and you spin it back and forth like that by hand, and you listen for the tone of it to change. It gets quieter, and then you pop it up and down, and you'll hear it kind of start to cut in, and then you just keep doing that. So I'm gonna have to figure something else out to spin these valves, and we'll go from there. All right, this is definitely gonna be a do as I say, not as I do type thing, because this is very redneck, if you will. But I got a tool here that's used to, I think it's supposed to be for measuring stuff. You got the 2 points, but it just so happens that the end of it fits in the drill and then the other end's fitting there. So we're just gonna spin those nice and slow. And then we should be able to pop them up and down from down below here. Or if not, we'll grab them and do that. And that's basically how you lap valves. Just do this a couple times, then you clean the course off, you go to the fine, do the same thing, and then you should have a nice mating surface between the valve and the seat. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this off camera because this is probably pretty boring to watch. And I'll come back in and show you guys the finished product. Oh, you know, one more thing I'm going to mention about lapping valves is make sure that you're not on the stroke of that valve. I kind of just realized this, I didn't say this, but when you're doing the intake valve, make sure the exhaust valve's up and vice versa. Because you don't want to be sitting there when it's sitting on the lifter and not actually making contact with the seat. So just make sure you do that too, that'll help. Kind of forgot to get a before shot of these, but there you go. There you can see what a little lapping will do. See that nice line where the seat and the valve are meeting nice now. The seats came out just as good. The intake's really good. The exhaust one's just a tiny bit pitted, but it's so minor that I'm not even going to worry about it. I think it will be just fine. So I think we're gonna wipe these off first because they still feel kind of gritty. Take a little compressed air, shoot it down the guides, blow out any crap that might be in them. Throw some oil on these suckers and try not to drop them on the floor. Get these things reinstalled here. Alright, so when I do these valves, I'll make sure I take the springs out all the way. I hook them up in the valve spring compressor here. This is an actual Briggs one, I think. And crank it down all the way. And I take the keepers and I just put a little dab of grease in them. Makes it a little easier because once you get it on the valve, it will stick. And you kind of wiggle that up in there. I know this is very hard to see for you guys. It's kind of hard to video. I hook the keeper with the side of a magnetic screwdriver. Sometimes. Kind of just place it on there half the time. And then we can kind of finagle that up in there. Maybe. A pair of pliers works too sometimes. You kind of have to fart around with it for a while. It's kind of a pain in the ass, not gonna lie. But eventually, once you get it stuck up in there, the grease will hold it to the shaft of the valve, or the stem of the valve rather, and you can kind of hook the top of this down over it, and then you can sneak the other one in. It makes it a little bit easier. But this is going to take a little bit of screwing around with, so I'm going to turn the video off here and I'll come back once I have them all in. Alright, well, several failed attempts and lots of curse words later, those are back in place. So that's good. Got both valves going up and down. Actually, side note, you really shouldn't spin these over if the plug wire isn't grounded out. It's not good for the mags. But anyways, now we can go ahead and put this back in. You know, I did just notice something. That looks awfully like olive drab paint to me, doesn't it? Interesting. I forget what year this thing was. I thought it was a 42. But I've had so many numbers going through my head recently, I could be wrong. But if it's 42 and that's olive drab, maybe this was a military engine. Actually, there's a few other remains of it here. Yeah, I'll have to look at the date again. That's possible this is a military engine, and that's kind of neat. But either way, go ahead and get this valve cover gasket back in place. I think I have a new gasket for that, actually. And that's nice and tight. I'm gonna put a little oil in the bore. What I think I might do actually is maybe we'll throw the head back on. Yeah, actually look at the top. There's more of that paint there too. Huh. Well, if I'm remembering this correct, and it is actually a 42, that must mean this thing's a military engine, so that's pretty neat. But I'm gonna go ahead and prep the stuff for this head off camera really quick, and we'll get this reinstalled. All right, gonna go ahead and throw the head back on. Put the head gasket here. Drop that back on. And I'm gonna go into the bag that Will sent me and use these because, as you guys probably remember, the original spacers here are shot. While we're at it, just stick this plug in here really loosely so we can get the tab lined up. Alright, let me go ahead and torque all these down and I'll be back in a second. Alright, got the head bolts snugged. I'm going to go ahead and start torquing them. Always want to make sure you go in a cross pattern, and you don't want to go straight to 20 or whatever the spec is. I usually do 20 on all the small stuff. I usually go to 10 first and then crank it down to 20. And then after I run it for a little while, I'll just double check it, because things change as it runs. But as you can see, I'm going across and then diagonal with the bolts and which ones I'm tightening. Cool, head's back on. It's starting to look more like an engine now. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is flip this thing over, and we'll put the oil pump, we'll clean out the oil pump and everything. We'll get the rest of the internals back together, clean out the sump, throw that back on, then we can throw the front shroud back on and really start wrapping this project up. So I'm going to go ahead and do some cleaning of some parts off camera here, and we'll get back to it. Alright, so we put everything through the ultrasonic cleaner here, and then I took some heat to this pin and managed to punch it out. So unfortunately it desoldered the float, but I have a spare one, so we're just going to run with that. But I figured we'd attempt to rebuild this carb. Hopefully it's not too warped. A lot of these will warp in between the top and bottom housings, and then they never run right. So hopefully this one's alright, but we'll see. But got some fresh paper gaskets here, because the cork ones will swell up and be useless after the first time you put ethanol gas through them. Just going to take a little compressed air and blow that out. It feels a little gritty. There we go, that's a little better. Drop that in there. Make sure that these passageways here are clear. We don't need another thing getting seized in here. There we go. I'm going to just adjust this slightly. I want that to sit about level. Alright, that seems to be working. Just wanted to make sure the needle wasn't sticking there. Go ahead and put the main body screws back in. This is the other reason they warp. Everybody tightens these things down to the point where it warps the bodies on these. You just need them to be snug. They don't need to be super tight. One other area that warps that you got to watch out for, and I'm going to take care of it in a second, is this top piece here, because it's the same deal. People crank down these bolts like it's the end of the world, and they warp both the carburetor and the intake manifold. So I always do that with all these engines. I got to make sure that's flat, and I'll show you guys how I do that in a second. That's good enough. Go ahead and put this in. These are another thing that people way over tighten with these main jets, and I've seen it where it will either ruin the tube or the seat in this case, or I've even seen it where somebody cranked in so tight on this that the end of the thing broke off in the seat up there, and the carb was basically junk. Never ran right. And then with these little emulsion tubes, you got to make sure when you're putting it in that it actually goes into the little cavity it's supposed to go into at the top. If you hit the venturi with it, it'll just bend and go up the venturi, which makes it useless. You can see, maybe, it has to come up into here. If it hits the edge here, it'll bend up that, and then, like I said, it's useless. So, the common denominator with all this stuff is to just be gentle with these. We've got a new needle and seat here for packing. It's not the best one. It kind of hurts your hands to use, but it's better than the one that was in there. Alright, and then while we're here, I'm going to take care of this, make sure this is nice and flat. And literally, this is the way I do it. Just run the file across the top. Make sure you're not on the intake stroke. You want that valve to be shut, because any shavings that go in here, you want to be able to blow out. Otherwise, they'll go through the engine. Alright, so after you do a little bit of filing, you'll start to see you got shiny spots and then dull spots. So you want to go until this entire thing is nice and shiny, because these are low spots and this is high spots. So this was definitely not flat. And then you're going to do that, and then you do the exact same thing on this. And then the only thing you want to make sure of is that you blow all the shavings out really good. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that, and I'll come back in a minute. Alright, so I just cleaned up the carburetor there. You can see how nice and shiny and uniform that all is. I had to take quite a bit of material off to get it nice and flat like that. So that's why it's important to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this and get along to the oil pump there. Clean that up, install that, and then we'll take a look at cleaning out the base and throwing that back on. Alright, so I got the oil pump all cleaned up in the ultrasonic. Looks brand new, it's great. Check ball's working and everything. I believe this goes in this way, because it pumps oil out through and shoots it out here, and that's going to shoot towards the connecting rod. So we got to drop this in here without spilling all the parts out of it. And I believe it's these two. Real fine thread, some bolts. And there's two lock washers that are that size. And there's an imprint form on the pump, so that must be these. I'm just going to spin this over and make sure that the pump is actually moving, which it is. Cool. So that's all good. I think that does it for internal parts. So I think I'm going to go ahead and clean some of the sludge out of the pan. We'll make a gasket for it, and we'll drop it back on the pan and start doing all the final little exterior details, and then maybe we'll see this thing run tonight. Alright, so we got it mounted back up on the base. I went ahead and cleaned out all the sludge off camera, and then I made a gasket and dropped it on, which I thought I was recording, but apparently I wasn't. Oops. But oh well, that's not that exciting. I'm not super proud of the gasket anyways. I didn't really have the right material, but oh well, it works. So at this point, we're not missing that much. We need to put the front shroud and the gas tank back on. I think the gas tank's still full of crap, so maybe we'll do the front shroud first. And then we just need a spark plug end here, or just cut the wire back and wrap it around even. And then oil and gas, and it should go. At some point I'm going to have to get the real deal gaskets for this backing plate, because that end plate is a little bit excessive. Apparently the paper that I had was a little too much, or too thick, but it'll work for a little while. I just don't want to leave it like that. I don't need it hammering itself to death. But for right now, I want to go ahead and take a look at this front shroud here. I want to make sure that this piece is going to go back in here and spin freely and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this stuff up, and we'll get back to it and get this front shroud on, and then we'll get the gas tank cleaned out, mount that up, and we'll go for a test run. Well, needs some fine tuning for sure, and an actual fuel setup, because I didn't clean out the tank yet, but the boat anchor Briggs Model A definitely runs. Pretty damn cool. Alrighty guys, so it's been a while since the last clip of this video was shot, because I had to go back to school, but I was on break this week and managed to button up the last few details on this Model A. So I think we're going to go ahead and show you guys how it runs and wrap up the video at this point. Because while there's still a few more little things to do, they're so minor that it's not even worth your time or my time to video it. So anyways, I'll go over what I did here. I think the last clip that I shot was the very first fire up of this thing. So since then, gone ahead and got a better spring for this crank handle, because the old one wasn't strong enough, and this, because of the amount of slop in this, it was actually rubbing on the starter gear. So we got that fixed, got a muffler on it, and a fuel line and tank. I went ahead and sealed up the tank best I could, and I think that it's holding. Doesn't look very damp, so went ahead and soldered as many of the pinholes as I could, and then just for good measure I went ahead and put a bunch of epoxy on everything. Actually, one of them is weeping over here, so I'll have to fix that, but it's good enough to run for now. Cleaned out the tank a bit, but apparently I missed a few spots. So I'll definitely have to address that. But yeah, that, and I did a tiny bit of tuning with an external tank. So I still got some details to fix. Mainly this gas tank and sediment bowl needs some work still. But oh, and then the other big thing I still got to do is I got to pull this front shroud off and get the right gaskets, because that is excessive in and out play. But again, these are all things that at this point I'm not going to even bother videoing them. I want to wrap this video up so I can get it out to you guys, and I'll go ahead and address them at a future date. One more thing for that list, this piece on the carburetor broke, so I got to get a new one of them. But again, these are all stupid little bullshit things that I want to deal with at a later date. But what I do want to do now is go ahead and fire this thing up and show you guys how it runs. Unfortunately, I forgot my tripod in Worcester, but I think I'll be able to find something to prop you guys up on, and we'll fire this thing up and I'll give you a walk around. Not to mention, I mean, you guys probably noticed, I also built that skid for it, which came out pretty good. I'm happy with that. Definitely making a little extra noise because that crank is bobbing in and out. I don't know if you can see it there. But definitely need to get that shimmed up before I like take this to a show or anything. But luckily it's almost winter, so I'll have plenty of time over my winter break to tear this thing apart and finish up these other details. But yeah, pretty happy with how that's running, honestly. It runs really damn good, especially considering how rough this thing was when I got it. So, overall, very happy with that. Definitely going to have to fix that, or finish fixing that tank and address that sediment bowl. I just had that thing lying around. I figured it may have had issues, but it was better than the one that was on there, so I figured I'd give it a shot. But I'll just get a brand new one from either Maple Grove or Rotary when I do my next parts order. And then maybe over Christmas break I'll look into getting that actual like red gas tank sealer, and I'll slosh that around on the inside, see if that helps seal it up a bit. But definitely pretty happy with that. Once again, I want to thank my buddy Will Woodward. He hooked me up with all the parts I was missing to make this thing nice and complete again. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to get this thing back together and running this well. Yeah, it's just sitting there putting along. I can't wait till next summer. I'm hoping over my winter break I might, or in between, either over my winter break or before the summer Long Island Antique Power Association show, I picked up a Briggs model ZZ from Cool Spring, and I have now a running A, a running B, a running K, and I'm going to skip the Z because it looks identical to the K, but the ZZ looks different. So I'm going to try and get the full lineup from A to ZZ and get them all in a line so people can see the difference, and I think it would be a pretty neat display. So it's pretty cool to be one step closer to that. And the ZZ I got seems to be in pretty darn good shape. I don't think it was that long ago that the thing ran, so hopefully it won't take too much to get it up and running again. But that'll be a future video way down the line. Especially seeing as though how long it's taken me to get through some of these engine projects with being at school most of the time now, but doing the best I can. So I'll probably end up breaking this video up into parts, honestly, but there you go. So I think if I remember correctly, in 1942, World War II vintage military Briggs Model A, revived and running once again. So with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to hit the little like and subscribe buttons. I'd appreciate that. By all means, leave a comment if you have one, and I will see you guys in the next one.